Your brain is wired to detect danger, sharp movements, raised voices, unstable behavior. But the most dangerous people you will ever meet rarely trigger those alarms. They smile easily, speak calmly, earn trust quickly. And sometimes, they are the last person anyone would suspect. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How many dangerous people have you already met without realizing it? Today, we're stepping inside the psychology of individuals who fooled everyone. Friends, neighbors, even trained investigators, hiding violent intent behind charm, normalcy, and carefully constructed identities. Stay with me, because later in this video you'll see the behavioral pattern that appears again and again in cases like these. And once you recognize it, you start noticing it everywhere. Let's begin with a truth that investigators learn early and never forget. Evil rarely looks evil. It looks normal, in many cases, disturbingly normal. Neighbors will often say the same thing afterward. He was quiet. She was kind. They kept to themselves. No warning signs, no dramatic red flags, just ordinary people, living ordinary lives, until the moment everything breaks. So how does someone dangerous blend so seamlessly into everyday life? The answer begins with something psychologists call the illusion of normalcy. Our brains are prediction machines. We assume that familiar equals safe, that politeness equals character, that routine equals stability. And most of the time, those assumptions help us move through the world without constant fear. But for certain personalities, those assumptions become camouflage, because the safest place to hide is inside people's expectations. Many highly deceptive individuals understand this intuitively. They don't stand out. They fit in, deliberately. Measured tone, controlled expressions, appropriate reactions. Almost like an actor who has studied the role long enough to become believable. And here's what makes this especially unsettling. Often, nothing about their behavior appears forced, which leads investigators to watch for something far more subtle than aggression. They watch for performance. Not theatrical performance, social performance. The small, calculated adjustments people make when they are managing how others see them. But spotting that in real time is extraordinarily difficult. Because skilled manipulators don't just lie, they curate. They present versions of themselves designed to disarm suspicion before it ever forms. And nowhere is this more powerful than in the strategic use of charm. We tend to think of charm as harmless, even attractive. Yet behavioral analysts frequently notice a pattern in certain high-control personalities. Charm is not always warmth. Sometimes, it is strategy. When someone quickly builds rapport, mirrors your communication style, maintains comfortable eye contact, and seems unusually attentive, your brain relaxes, defenses lower. Trust accelerates. This is not stupidity. It is human wiring. Connection feels safe, but here is where investigators grow cautious. Authentic connection develops gradually. Manufactured connection often moves fast. Very fast, almost as if the relationship is being assembled rather than discovered. And once that trust is established, questioning it feels socially uncomfortable, so people don't, which allows the mask to remain intact, sometimes for years. But masks are heavy, and under pressure, they begin to slip. Investigators often notice the first fracture during moments when a person's identity is challenged: a rejected partner, public embarrassment, loss of control, wounded pride. For most people, these experiences hurt. For certain personalities, they threaten the very structure of the self. Because when identity is built on superiority, admiration, or dominance, ego injury doesn't feel temporary. It feels annihilating. And that is where behavior can turn. Not always explosively. Sometimes, with chilling calm. But before we explore what happens when that psychological shift occurs, there is another signal detectives are trained to recognize. One that appears long before violence enters the picture. A subtle imbalance in emotional response. At first glance, the person may seem composed, unshaken, even impressive under stress. Yet investigators learn to ask a critical question. Does the emotion match the moment? Because genuine emotional reactions are messy. They fluctuate, break, contradict themselves. Manufactured composure tends to be organized, controlled, efficient, almost too appropriate. And when that precision appears repeatedly, experienced observers start paying closer attention. Still, even trained professionals can miss the pattern early on, because hindsight is brutally clear. But real life unfolds in ambiguity, which brings us to the question that quietly sits beneath every case like this. If dangerous people can look this normal, what finally exposes them? The answer is rarely a single dramatic mistake. More often, it is leakage, small behavioral contradictions that begin accumulating. A story that shifts slightly, an emotion that arrives half a second too late, concern that sounds rehearsed rather than felt. Individually, these signals are easy to dismiss. Together, they form a pattern investigators learn not to ignore. And once you understand how to see that pattern, you start realizing something unsettling. The line between normal and dangerous is not always where we expect it to be. In fact, it is often invisible until the moment it isn't.